Good day and welcome to the What to Focus On in your second week here at Symmetry Financial Group, or if you're a new agent with us. My name is Miranda Martin. I am Director of Symmetry Financial Group and the Ryan Miller Puckett Wayland hierarchy, and I've got my good compadres on the line. John, are you out there and ready to rock and roll?
Good day, madam. I am here, super excited, super fired up for this. Again, just kind of the continuation of week 2. I am John Ziller. I am as well direct to Symmetry Financial Group in the Carl Miller, Ryan Miller, Rob Puckett, Marshall Wayland hierarchy. So grateful and thankful to be so. And I know we have a couple of guests on with us, and the infamous Jim Archer and Larry Grossman. So thankful that that you guys are joining us for this. You guys out there can hear us loud and clear?
Good morning. Loud and clear here. Jim's here. Good morning.
Larry and Jimbo, guys, again, thank you so much. And again, what we're doing here is this is just kind of the what I'd really like to call this is just, you know, you get out in the field and you're kind of like foggy, right? It's a little hazy your first week out, and what we're doing is we're really just trying to give you guys just some information to be able to focus on, like really just take it, you know, day by day here throughout this second week and say, oh my gosh, you know what, I kind of now know what they're talking about. As I'm sitting in front of the family, my nerves are starting to go away. I've sat with 10 or 12 people so far in my first week, and you know, it was just a whirlwind. Maybe I didn't do some of the right things. Maybe I didn't, you know, use my 911 string as much as I should have. Maybe I didn't dig deep enough into their why. Maybe I didn't, right? And so a couple of topics that we're going to cover today, Miranda.
We are moving on to number 2. So today we're going to do basically the middle of the presentation, where we're going to talk about their why, what do they want, what does it look like now versus what they want, and just really covering how to present those options with a little bit more clarity than maybe we had in our first few sets. We believe that this is going to be an absolute game changer to you guys connecting with your clients.
Yes. So your why, their why, right? And really just kind of digging into it. So in my opinion, this is like, I believe deep down in my heart that this is the single-handed most important thing that you can do when it comes to the in-home presentation, right? As we talk about a sale is a transfer of emotion, whether it be a good emotion or a bad emotion, but that is purely the definition of a sale. And people are going to buy from you because they like you, because they trust you, and because they understand how you are going to impact their future. Well, through their why, that is what's going to give you the ability to be able to understand how you are going to impact their future. Meaning, you understand at this point, after you're digging really deep into their why, of what their situation's going to look like if, God forbid, he or she didn't come home, right? If he's the primary income earner, well, what does their new normal look like without him there? What do the finances now look like? Do they have to move? Where do they have to go? How is the family being impacted, right? How are the children being impacted? You know, being ripped away from not only now their father, but in addition to that, being ripped away from their home, in addition to that, being ripped away from their friends, the psychological impact that has. That's how deep we are taking this. But you know, taking it even that much further, it's like, okay, you know, how is the work-life balance going to play out? Meaning, you know, now we no longer have his income here. We no longer have him here. You know, you're going to have to go out there and start working to make sure that you can put food on the table. How are you going to be there for your kids, right? How are you going to be there for their soccer games? And these are the types of questions that we're going to really be digging into and asking. Or if it's on the reverse, right? And let's say that she didn't come home. What is his work-life balance going to look like? Is he going to be able to continue working that, that current job that he's at? And if so, what kind of help is he going to get? And how much is that going to cost? And, just so we're really kind of trying to dig as deep as we possibly can to really just kind of make it like, what? It's something we've never thought about. We've never talked about it. We've never gone through this process. And you'll find that most families don't, because it's a very uncomfortable conversation for them to have. And you're going to drum up a lot of emotion here. And just, I know I kind of skipped past this, but your why, as in you, the agent. Guys, I'm a firm believer that we are the stimulus that creates the response. So if you can't open up your heart and you really can't pour into them, how on God's green earth can you ask them to do the same? Right? And so it's like, what's that, Mer?
I said, I love that. And I think that's an awesome point that you made. If I want to make sure we didn't skate over that. If you don't open yourself up first, how can we expect the client to do the same? And guys, I think that just kind of leads in so well to when we're telling our story. And John, I know this is something that you're just amazing at, is painting that picture of what our story would look like first, because we're setting the stage, right? If we don't do a good job here of painting that picture and drawing that emotion, we get what we called is a surface level response from the client. And you guys may have heard this last week. You may have heard the client saying, I just want to see how much it cost after you told your story. Or they might have said, well, yeah, I just want to make sure my wife's okay. That right there, a lot of times, guys, is an indication that we did not go deep enough into our story. And we need to kind of work on drumming up some more detail in our version of our why first before going in and asking them what they would do if something bad happens.
Miranda, that's a really good point. So I would say this week, right? Meaning your second week out in the field, you should be able to start kind of implementing that temperature check. Meaning, as you go into this transition question, so tell me, why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean for your family? And you get some of those very kind of, I want to call them low grade responses, meaning like what Miranda just said, oh yeah, we just wanted to see how much it cost, or 10 of them came in the mail and I don't know, we just filled one out because we were sick of getting them. Right? If you're getting that non-emotional response, you have to do a checkup from the neck up and really kind of say, you know what, my why, as in you the agent, my why did not make enough impact to drum up the emotions, so then that way they can really kind of tell me why they're looking into it. And as you get better at this, like you're going to start seeing them kind of like really just diarrhea of the mouth. Like they're going to go on and on and on about all the different things that could really kind of transpire in this. So meaning, oh my gosh, you know what? We actually had one of our friends, she passed away, and we saw what it did to kind of the family. We saw what it did to the husband. I just don't want my family to go through that, because they had to go on GoFundMe, open up, and ask so many people for money just to be able to help bury them. And like, you're going to get all kinds of different stories. And if you're getting those types of stories and those types of responses, that means that your why has made an impact. And I really want to just take 2 seconds, Brent, if it's okay, and focus on this transition question and just kind of the psychology behind it. And we what we want to do here is really just be able to connect the dots, right? So you're telling your why, and then you're transitioning into their why. So it's a transition statement. So in the beginning, these transition statements or transition questions are really going to be able to kind of help you connect the dots of the presentation. So make sure that we're memorizing this for sure. Why are you looking into this type, right? We're saying this type for a very specific reason. What we're trying to do right here is we're trying to get them to compartmentalize the difference between life insurance and mortgage protection. A lot of people will ask a good question later on in the presentation and say, hey, so who do you have your life insurance through, right? Or who do you have your final expense policies through? Or who do you have your burial policies through? Or who do you have your cancer policies through? It's a brilliant way to kind of set that up, is because you're compartmentalizing the different types of protections that are out there. And that's exactly what this is doing. It's just compartmentalizing the difference between life insurance and mortgage protection. So make sure you memorize that, because it's a very good kind of lead-in question into their why.
I love that. And John, if you could, and I know that we have so many audios, guys, so we're not going to dive in to how to do the why story too much on this call. But John, I know on my website, and I know it's going to be on yours too, we've got this audio, the why and the client's why. Your instructions is to go back there and listen to this thing over and over and over again and really write out your why. Because John, what would you say for a new agent or someone that's kind of just getting into symmetry? What are some common pitfalls that you see the first time they present their why to you versus when you feel like it's a solid story of what we're going to present to the client?
So this is like really good, Mer. And I know I could spend honestly an hour on this, but I think number one, a very important takeaway is write out your why. Make sure you have it memorized and send it to your upline. So I'm sorry, don't memorize it just yet. Send it. So write out your why, send it to your upline, work on it with them to make sure that it's perfect, right? Because really what we're trying to do is we're just trying to paint a very good story as to how this can impact them, meaning how it can, how we can make it as relatable as possible. So you're going to tell your story, but you have to like dig deep and you have to paint clarity to a lot of the minor details. So like, let me just give you kind of a quick little snippet. So I would say, let me tell you why I got into this business. And then I'd say, my father this is going to be the bad version. I would say my father got diagnosed with cancer, and it put a big strain on our family, from a financial standpoint. And it was so bad to where my parents got divorced. All right, so that's kind of the bad version. What we're trying to do here is we're not just trying to use words and terms like, oh, it put us financially strained. We want you to dig in deep and show what those financial strains look like. Meaning, we used to go out and once a week we did dinner at, Olive Garden, or we did whatever, to where it was every day we were eating ramen noodle, right? And use like dates. So I would say in that beginning part, my father got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma back in 2003. So I'm really kind of bringing dates to make it kind of close to my heart and really kind of hit home with it. Does what I'm saying there kind of make sense, Miranda?
Yes. And I know that a lot of times, John, I'm just going to try to repeat something that I heard you say is instead of, okay, I had to move out of my house and move into another house, you would use a description like, I had to take the pictures off of the walls and pack them up all by myself. I had to go ahead and put a for sale sign in the front yard and hire a realtor right away, like walking them down what that looks like line item by line item to paint that emotion versus I had to move. Is that so?
Spot on, right? Literally after, leaving the funeral, had to contact a realtor immediately, prep the home for sale, pack it up, take all the pictures off the wall, right? Stuff like that. Very good. Just kind of vivid details that you're painting that picture. You're painting the pictures so they can kind of walk that story with you. So yeah, perfect. Just perfect analogy there, Mark.
So then we would wrap it up after we've really kind of hammered in our why. Again, use John's transition question. Why are you looking into this type of protection? What would it mean for your family? And then pause. Okay, pause, because what's going to happen is you just ask them something that they may have never thought of before. So don't be in a hurry. The next guy that talks loses. Let them respond and kind of see where they go. And sometimes I might get a response like this, John, well, it would be terrible. And then I pause again because I want them to really think about this. What does terrible mean? I don't have to ask him yet. Just let it sink in. One of the most important things that I learned when I started really performing at a high level is don't rush, especially through this part.
You know what? Great point. Like, bite your tongue and count. Like, count in your head after they give you a response. Okay, so after you ask a question, So why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? Well, I don't know. It's going to be really tough for her. And then just count 1001, 1002, 1003. And then if they still haven't talked by then ask a question. But again, what's really going to help you here, and this is why we're so headstrong on this, is what's really going to help you here is that as you're taking notes, right? So Miranda's going to show you something really cool here in just a little bit, now versus want. But even before that, I would definitely be taking notes as you're asking questions, because that's going to help you kind of pause through this process as well. But I count to 3 here in my head always and forever. Always count to 3, because here's what's going to happen, and I've seen it so many times, is they're going to feel so uncomfortable with the BS answer that they just gave you, where they're like, okay, he knows that I'm lying, so just boom, here you go, here's the truth. And it's crazy how well that works out. So you ask them a question, why are you looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? And then let them give you maybe a surface level response or whatever it is. And again, if they give you some response like that, well, it's going to be really hard, right? Well, I already now know my next question, if I don't get anything else, is, well, what do you mean hard? What does hard look like? Right? And really get them to be as descriptive as possible within their responses. But pause, count to 3, and make sure that you're not just jumping so quick down their throat with the very next question, like you're not even listening. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen, use your ears here.
Listen twice as hard as you talk. Right? Awesome. So guys, when we're digging into their why, this is something that I really like doing, because I'm going to go ahead and take it one step further with painting a picture of something that could truly happen to this client. So John, just for an example, let's pretend you're an electrician, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about you passing away to Jessica. I would say, God forbid, John, let's say you were at work yesterday, and I say, God forbid, like you had an accident, where you were installing, some kind of electrical equipment and you didn't make it home last night. How would this situation play out for your family as it stands today?
Mm-hmm. So good. So we're tying what they do for a living into the possibility of them not coming home, which is just absolutely brilliant, right? Again, even if they're a realtor, if you're driving, being in the car so much from place to place, so many accidents out there, you got into a really bad car accident, you weren't able to come home. How would this situation play out for your family as it stands today? And I love that, Mer, too, like those back-to-back questions, right? Can we go back for just 1 second?
Yep.
All right, and so here's what I would be doing, okay? If I were you, I would be asking those 2 questions back to back. So as you transition, you have that transition question. Why are you looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? Again, in the beginning, remember, we might not be getting those really good responses that we just talked about. It doesn't matter what they say. You're using that question as a temperature check for the client that all right, how good was my why, right? Like really, that's what that question is designed to do. It's to just give you a temperature check that says, how good was my why? If they're saying a lot to me and they're really kind of hitting home with it and they're pouring their heart into me from that very first question, I know that my why made an impact. If not, it doesn't matter what they say, right? They could say that, well, you know what, my dog, pooped purple and it got me nervous. Again, it doesn't matter what they say. It's kind of the concept behind it. And then we move on to this very next question that kind of Miranda just did. Is that one. So if God forbid, right, you got electrocuted yesterday at work, you're an electrician, and that happened yesterday, how would the situation play out for your family as it stands today? I'm going to call that a 1-2 punch. Okay, that's your 1-2 punch. It's just a combination. Ask those 2 questions in order, and you'll find that those are 2 very good open-ended questions. As you can see, right? Ask as many who, what, when, where, why, and how as we possibly can. But those are 2 very good open-ended questions back to back that we can be asking to really start to drum through their why. So perfect, Mer.
Yeah. One of them too, let's say it's like a retired couple and they don't really go out much. You could, one of the things is, God forbid, like, your husband goes to sleep last night and he doesn't make it through the night. How would that situation play out for your family as it stands today? Like, you wake up in the morning, your husband's not here anymore. Like, there's just so much emotion that you can hit on with that. And I'm telling you, this will wake people up. So even if you didn't do an amazing why, like John, John's amazing. I feel like at that. And for me, a lot of times that's something that I'm still trying to get better with. But I'm telling you, I can redeem myself if I do a good question right here and really take that second opportunity to paint that additional picture.
Agreed.
So at this point, again, we're going to pause. We're going to count to what? 1,
3.
2, 3, right?
Yeah.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to check off 2 very important boxes. Number 1, what would happen today? What would happen now if something bad happens? Versus, what do these guys want? And we want to go 7 layers deep on each one of these because, guys, you need to have a bird's eye view on what this whole situation looks like if one of these guys isn't here anymore. And at this point, I'm going to make a recommendation. I know a lot of times when we're new, we want to try to sell people. What if I told you that you're not selling these people? This is their chance to sell you on why you should show them a plan. That's exactly what we're doing. I want to know exactly what would happen right now, because here's the deal. If there's no pain, this is just another bill. And John a minute ago referenced the who, what, when, where, how. So here's just, these are some questions you could ask, like who would get the house? What would happen with the home? What adjustments could you make to make the home more affordable if you wanted to stay there? Where would you go? If you couldn't stay in the home, where would you guys go? How long would it take to kind of sell that house, or who would kind of keep that up? And you can just start going through this who, what, when, where, how. And in the past, I've used the visualization of bags, and I put each one of these in each of them. And I say that higher we can fill up each one of these bags, the closer we are to getting to the big why. John, is there anything that you would add?
Yeah, agreed. Really quick, and just remember, okay, as you're going through these questions, I would have a blank piece of paper out on the table, and I would be writing down their responses as fast as I possibly can. And we're trying to just be as very descriptive as we possibly can, and really kind of use as much language as they give us, right? So as you ask a question, whatever, right? You pick one here. Where would they want to live? And the guy, might say something, right? Well, they sure as heck don't want to live in a barn. Well, you'd write that down. Whatever they say, sure as heck don't want to live in a barn, right? Or, oh my gosh, you ask them something about the kids, like, man, my son is socially inept. Write that down, because those are triggering points to drum back up the emotion to that specific question, which kind of just creates the pain organically. So there's so much psychology into this, and I wish I could just really just kind of transfer it all into your brains right now from what I see when you do stuff like this. So blank piece of paper, and try and write as specific to the detail of what they're saying to the responses here.
And there's a way that really kind of simplifies this. So when I'm meeting with a client, I'll write down the word, what do you want right now? And I'll actually draw like 7 arms coming out of it. And those 7 arms represent the 7 layers deep that I'm going to go with this client. And I'm not going to move on to what they want to have happen until I can physically check off that there's a problem here and I know what these guys want right now. So just to kind of take it one step further, when we're going through, and now we've kind of talked about what you could ask, like who, what, when, where, how, here's some topics we can ask about. What would happen with the house? And again, we can go down that who, what, when, where, how. Who would get it? What would they do? How would they stay there? You know, we can keep drumming back this, what would happen with the house, and we just start making more notes about what they say about what they want to have happen with the house. You know, well, we'd have to move and put it for sale. Wow, how long do you think it would take to sell? Where would you go? Right here. Wow, how would that make everyone feel? And you can just keep going back with that who, what, when, where, how about the house, John, for what? You could probably spend all day here.
Honestly, you know what? And again, really quick, right? We're sitting here talking about going a minimum of 7 layers deep on this. You just went 7 layers deep on one arm of 7 different topics that you could potentially talk about, right? So, like, I really want you guys to keep in mind is like 7 layers deep is, I think, like a bare bones, bare minimum. And that's just to really kind of get the conversation going with it. But yes, like Miranda, again, just strictly pertaining to the house, you have 7 questions just right there. We haven't even talked about the spouse. We haven't talked about the kids. We haven't talked about work or work-life balance. We haven't talked about money and savings and right, anything. Like that's just on one little arm of this now, making it so much easier. So I know that every time I do this and I get out in front of the group and I ask, like I just role play with any one of the potential agents, and I'm going 18 to 20 questions deep. And everyone says, like, I ask them, how did that feel? You know, what did the kind of tempo of that how did that go? And everyone says, you know what? It just seemed like you cared a lot. Like as you're asking questions, they weren't overly penetrating. I wasn't coming across arrogant. You just got to be, I would just recommend just ask these questions as soft as you possibly can, and just think of as many questions as you possibly can to each particular topic. Great point there.
And so you just got, yeah, John, and you just keep peeling that onion back. Like, so I love that. So now we've figured out what's going on with the house. Wow, if you sold the house, what would that look like? And we've got all these notes, guys, because in a few times during the presentation, we're going to regurgitate these exact words that this client has told us. So using the exact words like tragedy, or they would have to go, like you said, barn, move into a barn, like having all of those is going to really impact your client in a minute when you say them back to them. And I also like to add in there, when I'm trying to figure out what happens with all of these people or all these arms, I kind of want to know what it looks like right now if something happens. What does it look like in a year from now if you were to pass away? What about 5 years? Like really kind of like understand what that timeline looks like, because I want to know what this pain looks like without any coverage. And what I'm doing with this right now is I am setting my brain up, because I'm going to show them some options in a moment. I'm trying to figure out right now, if I gave John a year to figure stuff out, what does that look like? Right? In 1 year, okay, what about the house? So if I know for sure if it was going to take him a year to sell the home and prep it for sale and then find somewhere else to go, I'm not going to talk to him about that yet, but I'm thinking about this stuff. What does that year look like, and would that be helpful? Does that make sense?
It does, buddy. You're trying to find your angle, right? Like how many, that's really what it is. Like it's to be able to kind of paint their picture clearly as to how we can help them. That's what we're doing here. We're just trying to find gather as much information as we possibly can as to how we can help them. And so again, if you're talking about that 1 year, like Miranda just referenced, is that after a year period of time, you know, where would you guys go? Well, we'd probably have to move in, you know, to an apartment. Oh, okay. You know, would you be able to do it on this side of town or a different part of town? Well, we wouldn't be able to afford anything over here, right? So, okay, so how do you think that would impact the children? You know, not necessarily going to the same school. Oh, you know what? I didn't even think of that.
And now
Well,
we're over, right?
yep, go ahead.
No. But now you've like, now we're talking about the house, but now we're also talking about the kids. So now we've toggled over to another stream that we could actually hit on if we want to at this point. You see that? Now we're even touching on the spouse. Guys, we could spend 3 hours here just doing all this for real. Right?
So crazy.
Mary or Jim, is there anything that you guys could add to like crystallize this point? I just really want to make sure that we're clear on this.
I have a thought, Larry, here, Director Miranda Martin. I want to just tell you that in the very beginning, when I first saw this, I will honestly tell you, this freaked me out because it was like, holy crap, how do you remember all this stuff? This seems so overwhelming. And I will tell you that it's repetition. It's just listening to this and practicing it and rehearsing it. And it starts to get into your mind, because in the beginning you're nervous, and when you're nervous, your brain is like a piece of machinery, and nervousness is like glue that slows the whole thing up and your ability to think quick on your feet. When you're confident, you're comfortable, it just flows. I mean, confidence is like oil in the gears, and it makes it go smoother. So the way you're going to grasp this, if you're like me, and I'm very analytical, and I had to compartmentalize all this in my head, is it's the repetition, it's listening to it many times, it's practicing it, and this stuff will just naturally start to flow once you get the fear factor out of your brain and you get the creative juices flowing. It's just a natural progression, but it doesn't happen in the beginning. It's got to happen through practice, and now I get it completely, but in the beginning it seemed overwhelming. It seemed like a daunting task to remember all this stuff. So it's repetition that's going to get into your head, and practice this as much as you can, because this is a big deal. This is the crux of our success, right? On this, hangs all on this stuff.
Hey guys, this is Jim. I'll add a couple things here. I think they're kind of big ideas, but I think they're important. So the first one is, we have to lead people through this process, right? The people that we're going to see, they don't know how it works. So they've asked us to come help them. We need to lead them through it. And then the second thought that I was having was, we need to get good at leading them through in such a way that they tell us their why. If we're suggesting their why, if we're giving their why to them, or trying to manipulate them into the right answer, right? This kind of stuff, that will not work well. But, you know, the way that, you know, Miranda and John, the way that you guys teach this, it's about getting them to talk about it. And, you know, as we get better at that, getting them to tell us what their why is, this will work much, much better that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim, I think you made a good point. This is designed for you to use open-ended questions. So you're going to run into trouble if you say, so, you know, would it make the wife upset? Yes. You know, would you have to change jobs? Yes. Instead, where would you work? What would that do? Ask a question that's designed to have more than one word answers. And that's going to help you a lot. And if this is something that you haven't done before, let's say you don't have, you know, a huge sales background, there's books on spin selling. They talk about questions to ask. I know Zig Ziglar has a lot of books on, you know, asking the right questions. But this is an art. You know, you really got, like you said, Larry, you just got to practice this. John, is there anything else you kind of add to this slide before we move on?
Just on the topic of what you were talking about, Miranda, you know, it's crazy. People come into this business and think that they have to become an expert closer or an expert, you know, at overcoming objections. I promise this. You don't have to worry about any objections. You don't have to worry about quote unquote closing if you're doing this part right. Become an expert presenter, meaning become an expert at asking questions. And just asking the right questions, just as Miranda and Jim just alluded to, is your open-ended questions. These aren't closed-ended questions. Would you agree? Do you think? Never start off questions like that. It's always who, what, when, where, why, and how. Very good point, guys.
Yeah. And by the way, one last thing I want to say, almost everybody we sit down with has a problem. Our job is to help them see the problem and lead them to that point. Because if they can see the problem, they're going to want to solve it, because the pain of not solving it is going to be really bad. And that's our mission in here. And that's what these questions help us help them to see, so they want to fix it. And then we can help them with the solution.
Benchmark. I'm gonna reference a benchmark. How do you know when you have this perfected? Is when you're helping out 9 out of 10 families that you sit with. I know that might sound crazy, but 9 out of 10 families that you sit with, that's when you have this perfected. So until you're helping out 9 out of 10 families that you sit with, you do not have this part of it perfected, which means that you need to continue to work on it day in and day out, because this is the magic recipe to the in-home presentation right here. If you do this very, very, very good, you will be able to help out 9 out of the 10 families that you sit with, because statistics say that 91% of families would be absolutely screwed if one of the spouses did not come home. So it's a good benchmark to gauge yourself. So if you're not helping out 9 out of 10, work on this over and over and over again. Become an expert at asking questions.
Cool.
And John, there's one thing I wanted to not skate over, because I think this is one that I don't know if you've even kind of trained on in the past as much, but sometimes you might be sitting with someone that's got, like, you know, maybe a good amount of savings there, or they've got like a bunch of life insurance already, and they might say, yeah, well, things would be fine because I've got this life insurance or this money saved up or what have you. And I know we've done lots of trainings on how to overcome that, but let's pretend that we just compartmentalize that for a moment and say, you know, can you talk about how you would do this part, and just really ask some questions about the unforeseen on the now, like what this would look like now if, God forbid, let's say you don't die. Let's say that, you know, you get in a car accident and this happens, and then you blow through all of the, you know, your savings that you've got there. I know you're great at kind of painting that picture, but I think this is an important key to not leave off of the now.
Yeah, you know, you're right. I really don't, but let's kind of give it a whirl here. And just in reference to that, like, so say that they do have, you know, whatever, $100,000 in their savings account, or $200,000 in their savings account, and they're out there working. You know, let's say, God forbid, if you got into a really bad accident, you weren't able to work. How quickly do you think you'd kind of burn through that money? Well, you know, I make $75,000 a year. I got $200,000 in there. So I guess that'd last 3 years. Okay. After that 3-year period of time, what do you do at that point?
Wow.
Well, you know, I don't know. Well, boom, right? Now we got something. And even so many times too, I can remember, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but I can remember even kind of using that gap, right, of unforeseen, and just kind of telling a third-party story. I love telling third-party stories. So I sat with a woman that she literally did. This is kind of the scenario that we're talking about. She had, you know, $250,000 in her savings account. She had a $200,000 policy already that she pulled out on for her mortgage, and she had like $1.2 million in a 401k from her employer. And we went through everything, and I told her, I said, honestly, I said, you know what, you're set. Like, you don't need this mortgage protection. You're covered from start to end, in pretty much most aspects. And she's like, you know what, thank you. She goes, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I said, you know, it's funny. I was sitting with a gentleman in a very similar scenario. He had $2.5 million in his 401k. He had several $100,000 in his savings account. He had a life insurance policy to protect the mortgage. And you know what? He asked me a really good question. He goes, John, do you have a policy that if I got diagnosed with cancer, or if I had a heart attack, or, you know, if I had a stroke or something along those lines, that if I'm put out of work, I don't want to have to dip into my nest egg, meaning I don't want to have to put good money after bad money, meaning I don't want to have to pull money from my savings account and take away from my retirement. Do you have anything that will help me kind of through that gap of getting retired? And I said, so here's what you mean, right? So if God forbid something happened to you and you weren't able to work, you don't want to have to dip into those funds, right? And he goes, that's exactly right. I said, okay, yes, we do have a policy for that. And it's crazy, through having that conversation with him, I'd have never thought about it, but that's the only thing that I see that you're missing. So if something happened to you, do you want to dip into that savings account? Do you want to dip into that retirement? And, boom, you have a conversation like that. And I was able to end up helping the lady. We got I think it was $241 a month, and I was absolutely blown away by it. That really just had that critical illness rider attached to it. So that unforeseen part of it is like just through third-party stories, I think that we can kind of talk about some of that stuff. I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not, Mer.
Just some ideas here, and I think so. Now that we've got all of these checked off, right? The thing I want to ask myself at this point as the presenter is do I think there's a problem right now? And if the answer is yes, I want to ask myself, do I believe the client think that there's a problem? Now I'm okay. Now I can go over to this want box. So now that we've kind of like peeled the onion back on the pains and tribulations of what it would look like right now without a policy, let's figure out what's important to them. What do you want to have happen with the house? In a perfect world, would you want to stay here, or do you think that you would put it for sale and move anyways? And what do you want to have happen? What do you want to have happen for the spouse, the kids? And you kind of just work your way through the same funnel that you guys just did over here. And this is going to be, now you're painting the happy picture, right? And you're figuring out, okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment. Let's pretend like these folks want to stay in the home, but we know by our research beforehand that that's probably not going to be affordable based on what they're paying for their mortgage payment. In this scenario, I know you want to stay there, but after my due diligence, if I gave these folks a year to figure the things out, are they smart? Do they have a plan that would help that's better than what they have now? And almost 100% of the time, maybe 9 out of 10, as John just said, that they do think that having a year to figure things out is better than the situation they have now, without dipping into their savings and dipping into, having to make things a lot more stressful. Is there anything that anyone else would add to this part before we move on?
I don't think so, but I think that you kind of knocked that out of the park, right? And just really it's just asking questions. And again, I love the transition into the want aspect of it, right? And again, even when you're referencing, the spouse and the kids, how do you want the kids' lives to play out? Guys, so many good things come out just by asking some of these questions. Well, you know what? Honestly, man, I don't want them to have to worry about the college tuition. I don't want them to have to worry about getting a car. I don't want them to have to worry about, and then boom, now all of a sudden you're drumming up literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in coverage. And they will ask that so many times, right? As I'm going through this process, and I ask that question, just simply, how would you want this situation to play out for your kids? And they say, I don't want them to have to worry about anything until they're 25. So I don't want them to worry about college. I don't want them to worry about cars. I don't want them to worry about books and blah, 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 blah. And then they'll ask you at the end of the presentation, hey, because it's so heavily on their mind, hey, do we have anything that we can maybe get a policy that's going to cover everything we talked about with the kids and with my wife, and giving her some of that extra income, maybe replacing my income for 10 years. You know what? I'm here today strictly for the mortgage protection, and that's it. I can help you out with the life insurance side of it, but let's just go ahead and get the mortgage protection put in place now. And then if we can get you approved for that, I'll come back out here and try and help you out with your life insurance side of it. And boom. So always make sure that your main focus is going to be the mortgage protection first. Okay? That always comes first. Write the policy on it. Do not sit there and combine and write a bunch of different policies if you've only been here for 6 months. Okay? So
I want to pause there, because what you said is so important, and I want to make sure we didn't glaze over it. And this is something that the trainers that trained me really embedded in my mind. You are there for one reason, and that's to make sure that if the client dies, the family doesn't lose the home. That's it. That's number one. Number two is all that other stuff. So I love that you just brought that up. That was just a crystal clear thing that of my objective meeting with folks. Confused minds don't buy, right? So I just love that. Okay, so now guys, remember we have notes written down because we're about to use those notes when we go ahead and we show them the plans. But here's an important point. I'm going to put the brakes on for a moment. If they don't have a good why, do not show them plans, okay? If you're confused on why this person wants the coverage, do you think they're confused? Larry just came up with a great line. If they don't mentally buy it, they won't physically buy it. So if you're like confused here that why they need it, this is when you go to your 911 string and you say, there's no why, please help. John or Larry or any of you guys with anything else?
It is that simple, okay? If you can't, all right, so how do I put this? If all of those boxes, right, weren't filled up between the now and the want, and you didn't have, 7 to 14, 15 different responses, and it's not clear, just like Miranda said, if it's not clear in your mind as how you can impact them, you need to resort to your 911. You guys, you have got to be crystal clear here, okay? Just like Miranda just said 2 seconds ago, confused minds don't buy, right? And I'll resort to it one more time. People will buy because they like you, trust you, and understand how you are going to impact them. That understanding element, if you don't understand, which ultimately means that they don't understand, you need to 911.
Yeah.
So many people like just resort to, okay, well, I went through the process, I went through the steps, I didn't skip any of the steps. It still needs clarity. There still needs to be meat, right? We still need to be able to dig deep enough. We still need to be able to present it. And think of it this way. If we hop on the 911 with you and you can't tell us exactly what their life is going to look like without the other person coming home, that's a pretty good indication that you didn't dig deep enough and that we need to get on the phone so we can get in there and ask them the additional questions or help guide you to the best of our ability. So many people just skip it and go straight to the money. And here's what else I can promise you, okay? You can get to a point to where you're so good at this that, remember how I just told you 9 out of 10 families you're able to help? The 1 out of 10 that you aren't helping, you should never even show them the quote. You won't have to, because you're not getting enough information out of their why. You're not getting enough information out of the fact finder. You're not getting enough information, period, to be able to help them. So then that's where you don't even show quotes because they don't have a need for it. So again, temperature checks that we're going to talk about later on in the coming days. But
can I mention something real fast here? The worst thing you can do, is to show plans. You could be really comfortable showing plans. If you show plans to people that aren't ready to buy, you are guaranteeing a disaster. I don't care if you say, well, I'll show you a $10 a month plan. You'll make it sound so cheap. No, if they don't connect to it, they're not going to buy it. And the worst thing to do is to move forward and show plans. Because if you show plans and then they give you a decision, you walk out of that house like they declined you more or less. And it's the worst thing in the world is having your psyche getting beat up when you don't need to because you didn't do the right steps. I'd rather do what John says, that one you don't even show plans and walk out saying, I didn't even show plans. You walked out on them. They didn't walk out on you, more or less. So it's crucial for your own mind.
I'm going to add one thing here, and I want you guys to put this in your notes. Before you show money, you are a consultant. After you show money, you're a salesperson.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So you want to take that because once the dollars are on the table, that's done, right? So some of the things that are just so important, guys, is you got to price these out before you go to the home. And I do not do it 10 minutes before your appointment. I don't even recommend doing it the day of your appointment. It should be the night before. Go into Virtual Mentor. Go through, you're going to price out the full mortgage, half of the mortgage, and the critical period equity protection. And you want to find a few options, and the cheapest one should be around 10% of what they're paying for their mortgage. And do your homework. This is how you learn. I know a lot of these people want to become a product ninja when they're new, and I tell them, you need to worry about memorizing the in-home presentation and your phone scripts, because this is when you book a lot of appointments, this is when you become a product ninja. When you go to Virtual Mentor to price out each person you have an appointment with. And before you go to your appointment, you've got to call your manager and go over your options. Do not just assume that because Virtual Mentor makes a recommendation that that's the best one. You have to get a live person to say, yep, that's a good one before you go to your appointment.
Totally.
And so just to clarify, if they're paying $1,000 a month for their mortgage payment, you want to find something around $100 a month for their mortgage protection options. And just kind of, that's like a good kind of threshold. So when we go and we're pricing things out, this is something that a lot of new people are confused about. So here's the 3 ways that we can do mortgage protection. Number 1, the full mortgage. Let's just pretend it's $100,000. Another option is doing part of the mortgage, and part doesn't have to be half. You know, I might be pricing out this gentleman that's, 65 years old and has a few problems, and part of his mortgage, let's say it's a $200,000 mortgage, to get that around a $200 monthly payment, I might be looking at like doing 30% of his mortgage or 40%. It doesn't have to be half. It just try to find a denomination that is going to be at that around that 10% mark of what they're paying for their mortgage payment. And these top 2 options are going to be done using a term life insurance policy. So when you go into Virtual Mentor, you're going to look up term, and you're going to go ahead and put in a $100,000 mortgage. Partial, play around with it. It's a term life insurance policy. Some of our most popular term life insurance policies are Mutual of Omaha Term Life Express. Another popular one is United Home Life, their term policy. What are some other ones that we use? I guess those are probably the top 2. American
the 2 AMAMs, Express Term and Home Certainty.
Yep. And so we're not going to go into a lot of product training here, but we just want you to understand if these clients are under 65-ish and they're relatively healthy, term is probably going to be something we'll look at. If they're over 60, 65 and there's health problems, you guys will look it up, but the chances are it's not going to be affordable for them to go with the top 2 options on a term life insurance policy.
Correct.
So if you're dealing with someone who's over the age of like 65, or let's say they've had major health problems, like let's say that there's cancer that's even in the last 5 to 8 years they've had any type of cancer. If they've had a heart attack, if they've had heart surgery, if they've had a stent put in, those are all considered major health issues, and you're going to be looking at option number 3. This is the equity protection critical period concept, and we're going to train specifically on this 3rd option this week in this new agent onboarding week 2. But guys, you're going to be offering them a year or 2 or 3 or maybe even just 6 months or 3 months of mortgage payments, and you're going to use a whole life insurance policy. That would be something like United Home Life, their whole life. There's Transamerica Whole Life. There's Americo, their Eagle Premier, just for a few examples. Mm-hmm. But do not go in there and believe that you're going to be selling a full mortgage payout to an 80-year-old. It's not going to happen. It's like strategically will not happen, because you're going to be double or triple or quadruple their monthly payment for their mortgage. Probably.
Can I put a thought in here also? The average policy we sell is $85 a month, okay? And this is why don't worry about how much face value the policy has, because for a 30-year-old, it might be a $300,000 mortgage with ROP. For a 40-year-old, it might be a $200,000 mortgage. For a 60-year-old, it might be a $100,000 mortgage. And for a 70-year-old, it might be a $15,000 or $25,000 final expense. They're all going to come out at the $85 level. It's just the younger you are, the healthier you are, the more face you'll get. But we're basically going to end up in that $1,000 APV. No matter what we do, it averages out. When you look at the big numbers, you'll see the group did 100,000 on 100 policies. The group did $1 million on 1,000 policies. It just works out that way. So don't stress over the face value. You want to find something that's budgeted comfortably for them, and it just works out at $85 on average.
And Larry, you just said something that I missed. This whole life, this option number 3,
Right.
This is also noted as called final expense in Virtual Mentor. These are just the type of life insurance policies we're going to use to cover their mortgage. So, you know, I just want to make sure we're clear on kind of some of the terminology that you guys are going to be seeing when you go and look at these insurance companies versus kind of the way that we talk about it with the clients. But all of these are taken out for the idea to protect the mortgage.
Exactly.
Jim or John, is there anything that you'd add here?
No, pal. I just other than the fact that, like, you know, again, you just use your common sense, right? You're going in there and you're offering you $600 a month. Let's get with our upline, because you know I would just use that rule of thumb. Like if it's over $150 a month, and that's my low one, just get with your upline immediately. Okay, if you see those big numbers. Because the realistic nature is that far and few between are actually going to purchase that. Number one. Number two, the retention rate isn't as high once you get up there. So not saying go in there and offer $30 a month policies. I mean, if that's what makes sense, right, and that's the purpose behind the plan, then do it. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, a real good range here is 85 to 125, 130 bucks a month.
Yep.
Realistically.
So guys, one of the things, so let's say that we've done our research, right? We're going to know based on our research what if the full mortgage payout is something that makes sense for these people, or a partial. So if it is something, let's say you're dealing with a younger person, you want to kind of make it sound good to take that. So I have written here that number one, this full mortgage payout's the most expensive and hardest to qualify for. 95% of the time I can find clients a more affordable solution. If I'm dealing with someone who I know the top two options is not going to be a good fit, I'm going to kind of scare them away from it by using some of that language. But if I know that is an option, I'm not going to say that, okay? So you want to use your common sense to make sure that you're leading the clients towards picking something that's going to be a good fit for them. So in addition to using that language, John, I know that you wanted to touch on here how to regurgitate some of the stuff they just told you a moment ago in the presentation of these plans.
Yes. And do you want me to do it right here, or I thought we did?
You want to do it
another slide?
Fine, hold on. Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, well, that was the next slide.
That's okay. Okay. Honestly, this is something that I see as a common pitfall to some new agents. That when we're going into the presentation of the dollar amount of the money, we have to incorporate their why again. Okay, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? It doesn't matter whether you're doing the full mortgage amount, half the mortgage amount, or even, you know, final expense, equity protection, critical period, right? The bottom one there on that third one. Again, the full mortgage amount, like let's just use that one for just an example. So you're going to say, okay, so I'm going to have it written out, right? I'm going to have my plan that I'm getting ready to present written out, which we kind of referred to yesterday. We showed you guys that $200,000 level guaranteed fixed, you know, what have you. So with that, I'm going to tie the presentation of, I'm going to tie their why into the presentation of the money. So I'm going to say, okay, Bob and Mary, here's option, right? And we're going to put out two options. I'm going to say, okay, Bob and Mary, here's option number one. If God forbid Bob doesn't come home, here's what this $200,000 is going to do. It's going to pay off the mortgage in its entirety. And what that's going to do is that's going to give you the ability to not have to leave his funeral, contact a realtor, prep the home for sale, sell it. It's also going to give us the ability to where we don't have to worry about the kids not only losing their father, but losing their home. And in addition to losing their home, also being yanked away from their childhood friends. In addition to that, we talked about the work-life balance, okay? That if God forbid he doesn't come home, you're not only going to have to go into right, back to work, which is going to take time away from the kids, as you said, you're going to need to be able to be there for them. So this option right here is going to eliminate all of that, okay? That's on the full mortgage amount. And so we're really going to tie their why into the presentation of the money. Well, let's even use kind of the partial mortgage amount, okay? Maybe give you a scenario for each one. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, okay, guys? So here's what we're doing, guys.
We're
I know the
repeating,
mortgage amount is 300. Go
John,
ahead.
what he's doing, guys, and this is why I went back to the slide, is he's just taking his notes that he had written down on here and he's just repeating them. That's all it sounds fancy what he's saying, but all he's doing is he went back to this now chart and he's just repeating the things that they had said that they wanted and the things that they had told him earlier. And saying, we would do this option because blank, insert all of this stuff he's reading off now. Sorry, I'll let you keep going.
No, that's perfect. And I'm so glad you brought that up. And you're right. And I did, like, I even covered work and work-life balance, covered the kid, right? Covered how they have to sell the home. There's so many different things that you're tying right into that. Okay. So yes, you just literally, I don't even care if you guys do this, that you have the now and the want up, pull that sheet back out on the table with the presentation of the money. So you're going to have your plans out on a piece of paper, and then I would pull this now and want sheet right back up. And then just literally look at the now and want sheet and say, okay, guys, this plan right here is going to eliminate, and then just point to it and talk about it. Point to the house, talk about the house, point to the spouse, talk about, right? Point to the kids, talk about the kids, and just point to it and talk about each and every little thing of what this plan is going to do. It's going to eliminate all of this. It's going to give you exactly what you want, and boom, 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 boom. And lay out those bullet points. But bring this piece of paper with you to the presentation of the money. Okay? And then again, even as we talk about the partial income, because that plan might make sense, I'm still going to incorporate their why. And I'm still going to do the exact same thing. Yeah.
Talking about partial payment, and I just have some notes written down here. I just want to make sure that we don't glaze over them. The partial payment, guys, this is probably my most popular option for people when there's two heads of the household, because two heads of the household, typically these days, if there's two people working, the household is running off of two incomes. So if you were to eliminate one person, they don't come home, neither does their paycheck, right? So what happens is when we can pay the house down halfway, normally that makes it affordable for one person. And even if your client's single, you know, and they pass away, their beneficiary probably also has a home, right? So if you can at least pay this down halfway, it makes it more affordable for that beneficiary to now have this secondary home, you know, that they're now responsible for. And that's kind of what what's that?
I'm sorry, buddy. But that's what we need to explain,
in addition
right?
to what you're doing. So good. Sorry, I'll let you take it.
No, you're perfect. You're perfect. That's all I'm saying is we just need to explain that. Explain what it's doing and how it's helping them, and how it, like what this coverage is doing. The dollar amount of the coverage doesn't mean anything unless it has a purpose behind it. And so that's all we're doing there, is we're just explaining the role and purpose of the coverage. What is the purpose behind this plan that we're presenting? How is it going to impact them? How are they going to be able to use it? How is their new normal going to look because of this plan? That's all we're talking about here. And again, even the partial, right? Use it and say, look, you know what? God forbid if you didn't come home. We talked about, you know, half of the mortgage and how that's going to help us. Well, what it's going to do is going to take your mortgage payment, and instead of it being $1,800 a month, it's $900 a month now at this point, right? And with that $900 a month payment, we also talked about how much easier that would be for you, because you can't even rent an apartment for $900 a month. And this is going to give you the ability to be able to stay at home. It's also going to give you the ability to be able to kind of start to work out a schedule. The kids don't get yanked away from their friends. They're actually able to stay up in their own room, in their comfort zone, and we're always going to be able to keep a roof over their head, right? So we're still going to explain the role and purpose of the money. And it's the same thing on the third and bottom one with the equity protection, which we're going to talk about. So I don't want to hit this one too hard, especially in lieu of time here. But even on the third and final one, we're going to explain the purpose behind it. Guys, look, as we talked about, what this is going to do is this is going to give you 2 years. And within that 2-year period of time, we talked about how you had the equity over here, right? You're going to be able to take the 2 years, prep the home for sale, sell it, take the equity of $50,000, roll that into a condo, and now instead of having a $2,000 a month mortgage payment like you guys have right now, she's going to be able to go and buy a $100,000 condo, roll $50,000 into it. Now she only has a $300 a month payment, making it that much easier to live off of the Social Security, right? That's all we're doing, is we're just explaining the purpose behind the plan. You have got to incorporate their why and how it's going to help them, so they have a sense of clarity. Is what I'm saying there make sense, Mer?
It is, John. So if I'm taking this away, number one is describing what it is, and then number two is just repeating their why back to them and having them agree with it. So I'm going to and I want to read this little script I've got on screen, but I just want to go ahead 2 slides. Before you show any plans, and after you've done that description and then regurgitate their why, you've got to ask them if they like it. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree that it's good to have, 1 year of mortgage payments? Do you agree? Or whatever the plan is, if you're showing them a half mortgage payment, does that make sense? Do you agree that that would be helpful? And they're going to say yes, because you just repeated what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And just before we kind of move on, and I know we're kind of getting to the end here, I was really bad at presenting option 3 until I added in these 3 things I've got on screen here. But before, when I was new, everyone just kind of had like a question mark above their head when I explained this third option. So I just want to read it out, because I think you guys just memorize this part and then bundle it in with John just said, and you're going to win. So I say this option number 3, John, is called equity protection in critical period. And the reason why it's called that is I'm sure the bank isn't going to give you a call if, let's say, you die tomorrow or tonight. They're not going to call Jessica tomorrow and say that we got to pay the mortgage in full in 12 hours. You think they would do that?
No.
You got to pay that whole $200,000 and by tomorrow. But on the other hand, they're not going to give you guys a call and say, listen, John, I really liked you and Jessica, so we're going to give you the next couple of years off of paying your mortgage. Do you think they're going to do that? No, but it would be great if they did, right? And then you shake your head yes. And as soon as you say, but it'd be great if they did, right? And I shake my head yes, and John says what?
Yes.
Yeah. He goes, yeah, that would be great. And as soon as he said, yes, this is going to be great, what did he just agree to liking?
I agreed to liking the 2 years of mortgage payments, because that's exactly what it is.
And I'll tell you guys, 100% of the time, we are going to be able to show them at some length of time that's going to be in budget. May it be an 85-year-old person and it's 3 months of mortgage payments or whatever the case may be, or it's a 50-year-old and we're going to show them 4 years. I'm 100% of the time going to be able to find a number 3 option that is affordable. So as soon as he says, right, I've got myself someone that's going to take action if I do the rest of this stuff correctly. It's a done deal. But you got to present that just like that, and in conjunction with that, regurgitating, the next step would be regurgitating the what John just said. So let me just make sure we're clear. Like, if you had 1 year to kind of figure things out, and that way you don't have to put the for sale sign in the yard and the kids don't have to move and blah 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 blah. You think it would be helpful to have a year to kind of figure things out? Are we on the same page with that? He's going to say yes. Because there's no point in the world to show them a plan if they haven't told you they like the idea of the plan. And this is where so many people, the wheels come off, because they just start throwing money on the table, but they forget to do this last and most important tie down of the whole entire presentation of the money. So repeat, and you've got to ask them to agree. Do you like this option? Do you think it would be helpful to have 2 years to figure things out? And if you've repeated what they said, 100% of the time, they're going to say yes.
Powerful. Good stuff.
Yep. Yep, get the commitments like we talked about yesterday. Micro commitments all the way through.
If they say they don't like it, which shouldn't happen, but it might because we're new, we're learning this stuff. Here's what we'll tell you. This is when you 911. You do not show the money. Okay. No, I don't. I think that's a terrible idea, John. I've already got money. I don't need that. Okay, no problem. Let me just give my manager a quick call because again, I work with like, I don't know, like 30 different carriers and maybe 1,000 different products. And I just want to make sure before I show you, the options that I'm taking you down the right path. And I'm going to call for help because if there's no pain or they don't think they need it, there's no point in, if it's $5 or 500, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, what you don't want to basically imply to them is, guys, I know you don't want this. I know you don't think you need it, but I'm going to show you some exciting ways to pay for it that are so damn cheap, you're not going to say no. We're not going to work. Not going to work.
Oh, that's good.
And then just again, so I know we're at the end here, but now if they've said yes and everything's going well, and let's say you've called your 911 person and everything's good, now we're good to go, John. I'll let you kind of explain this one.
Of just keeping the 10% option in your back pocket. So the whole idea behind just put down 2 at a time is we're just trying to keep this as simple as possible. I can remember in the very beginning, Miranda, I had like 6 different options. If I had a $250,000 mortgage, I would put $250,000 with return of premium and without, $200,000 with return of premium and without, $150,000 with return of premium and without. And all I was doing is just price selling at that point, meaning I was just trying to get them committed to just being comfortable with a price. And that's not it. We have to get them comfortable with the concept, and the price doesn't matter. Now, again, I know that might sound a little contradicting to what we were just talking about a little bit ago, is that, well, you just said I can't show $600 a month. Well, it's rare, right? So yeah, let's get that out of our head. But the reality is that if the concept makes sense, and these concepts have to be within the idea of their budget. So I always like to do, again, so many new agents I see that kind of come in here and they just throw out that $30 a month plan because it's comfortable for the agent. You've got to get uncomfortable, right? And don't worry about the plan. It's the purpose behind the plan, like we just talked about. But 2, you have a KISS, right? It's the KISS theory. Keep it super simple. Present 2 options. And here's kind of the way that I would do it. If I had $1,000 mortgage payment, for example, right? $1,000 mortgage payment. I know that bottom option is going to be about 10%. So I'm going to write that $100 a month plan on a separate piece of paper, all on its own. And then the other 2 concepts, I'm going to probably have it somewhere in the neighborhood of about $200 a month, and then about $150 a month. Okay. Yeah, there you go, Mer. Sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna go about $200 a month on my high option, and then $150 a month, and then that $100 a month package, that's on a separate piece of paper off to the side. And I'm just gonna present the 200 and the 150. Okay, this is a really good way of, number 1, keeping it super simple, but number 2, kind of increasing that annual premium volume too. Because a lot of people think, well, you know what, my area, guys, I've sold in all areas across the country. I've been to so many different states. I've been to low-end poverty where I'm driving around to trailer parks, and I've been to high-end multi-million-dollar homes. And it's the same. It's just the confidence within the agent. Everyone has a spare $100 a month or $150 a month. Yes, it's the exception to the rule of the people that don't, but I'm telling you, like, get that out of your mind because it truly is the concept behind the plan. But
John, I have a question. So, and I know some new agents are probably wondering this is, which option are you showing them? Are you showing them this one, or this one? How do you know where to start? So I'm a new agent. I'm just like, okay, I know. So tell me how they would make that recommendation.
So I think you have it written perfectly here, Mer, is that the term policy, if it's under the age of 65, I'm pretty much going to go term on it if they're healthy enough, right? And if they're over the age of 65, I'm only presenting critical period and equity protection. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Like, I don't, like, again, like, here's the thing. If they're over the age of 65, I think there's only a couple of carriers that's going to give them a 10-year term. Why on God's green earth are we offering up 10-year terms? That makes no sense. It's a complete just waste of money, because I think that we can go back to like amortization tables of the people that live to the age of 65, and they're like 88% likely to live until they're 80. Like, I don't remember. Maybe we can find that somewhere, Mer, but like, I just feel like we're doing the family a disservice that at the age of 65 that we're offering up a term policy. And I might even go one step further and say I really like the ability to be able to offer them a 20-year term up to 60. So even 65, I know we can still get them a 15-year term with some of the carriers, Mutual of Omaha, maybe even Americo. There's a couple of them, but really what I'm trying to do, so it's kind of like a two-parted process, right? Is that if the half of the mortgage amount, and now I'm going to the partial, if half of the mortgage amount on a 60-year-old is $400 a month, I'm probably not gonna even show that.
That's exactly what
right?
we're heading is with our research, John. It's going to let us know common sense wise where we're at. So you hit the nail on the head where I was hoping you'd go with it. If this is now $400 in our research, is there any reason to show them a partial if their mortgage payment's $1,000 a month? In common sense land. No, right? So you've eliminated this option, and no, we don't recommend you going there with them. That's what other agents do from other companies, and that's why we close behind all of these other companies way more, because they're not trained on how to do this common sense thing here. So in this scenario, John, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't do these top ones. We're only presenting critical period equity protection as the third.
Correct. And that's a 60-year-old, right? I used 60-year-old, half the mortgage amount is $400 and something odd dollars a month. I'm not even going to show half the mortgage amount. I'm going to stretch it to maybe 4-year and 3-year on the critical period equity protection.
And we got to use these words. If we're talking about the full mortgage and partial, and we know that it's only the third option we're showing, if we don't close the door on the top two, they're still going to ask for them. So we got to scare listen, those top two are the most expensive. They're the hardest to get. And as soon as that word expensive comes out, most of the time people go, I don't want those ones. Show me the one that's the cheapest. Okay. Well, this is my most popular way to go. It's number 3, and it's the most economically priced. Now they want that. So.
And by the way, Larry, again, Virtual Mentor is an awesome tool for helping you figure out where to go, but you have to talk to your mentor. Have to, because Virtual Mentor is not going to guide you through the right way to go. It'll just throw numbers at you, which you need, but you have to game this before you get into the home so that you're walking in with a plan that you can execute effectively. So that's so crucial. Those two together are really, you need to do that. So.
Awesome. I think John, or Jim, is there anything else you'd add? Again, ask them if they like it before showing the plans. So I just think all of that is so key.
No, pal, I got the 1-a-day train coming by, so I had to mute myself.
Okay. So guys, just in closing, if you do, and again, before you show plans, we trained on this yesterday, you've got to use those 2 rebuttals, those 2 preventative maintenance paragraphs that we trained on in day 1. Throw those down, use those before you show the money. And if they tell you at the end that they still need to think about it, it's because their why wasn't big enough. So we are recommending you go back to the why. And if you know for sure 1000% that why is good, then you got to keep dialing that dollar down. Maybe now we go from $100 a month down to 85, and then down to 60, and then down to 50, and we just keep dialing that dollar down, because now it's just a pricing game. So guys, I know covered so much stuff here today, but we'd like you to pick the 1, 2, or 3 top things that we covered that you really want to take action on. this is an audio that I recommend you listen to over and over and over again. This is the most important part of the presentation, so don't sell yourself short. Amateurs practice till they get it right, and professionals practice so they never get it wrong. Thank you so much, guys, and we will see you tomorrow for day 3 of the second week of onboarding.
Bye, guys.